I'm 5 years in, and it's so hard to build something and actually know what to expect
Yeah.
because every month you're just fighting against another hurdle.
Welcome back to Meet Bridget, a show that sheds light on the often untold teenage and young adult stories of successful women from all types of backgrounds and in all sorts of careers. This show is an extension of our confidence coaching service for young women, Meet Bridget. I'm Kashia Rosenberg, and I co-host this show alongside my best friend and Bridget CEO, Asha Gabriel. We are currently in our 4th season, and I am both humbled and excited to approach our 100th episode very, very soon. One of the things that never ceases to amaze me is the community that we've built over the years. A lot of our listeners know that we're going to be launching our first workshop since the pandemic next month, and that workshop is the byproduct of nearly 10 years of proprietary research, programming, and one-on-one interviews with incredible women such as today's guest. I'm truly in love with the workshop, and we get to share all the learnings that we've developed over this time, and I think it's going to be really invaluable. So I am joined today by a woman whose path is near and dear to my own heart, Kathryn Dickson. She had 2 loves growing up, medicine and sewing. As a kid, she donned all manner of pink cowboy boot and rhinestone tiaras while looking for cuts and scrapes to clean up on the playground. These days, she's a family nurse practitioner with her DNP. Talk about accomplished, and we can dive more into that because I'm probably being way too simplistic about it. But she's also successfully launched her own scrub line, OliveUs Apparel, which is meant to create logical solutions to everyday medical workflows. After her rigorous schooling and practice within the nursing profession, she realized that she wasn't the only medical professional who wanted better options. All of Us was founded to provide her community the accessibility, comfort, and innovative designs that she'd always searched for herself. So, welcome, Kathryn. I'm so excited to bring you onto the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is near and dear to my heart because a lot of my passion started when I was in high school. So to be able to talk to other women and encourage them to stick with their dreams, I think it's fantastic that you guys are doing this.
Thank you so much. So, let's dive right in. I really love that you had multiple passions as a child. Let's talk about your upbringing, where you're from, and then I want to hear all about little Kathryn and, what that was like walking around on the playground trying to fix people up.
So when I grew up in Troy,
Okay.
Michigan, in a small town, and as a kid, I went to like the local preschool and elementary school. And my parents would say that I would go to school and instantly want to make friends and run around the playground. When I was 6, they bought me an antiseptic kit with like bandages and antiseptic cream. And I would be on the playground wanting to use it and telling everyone that I was a nurse and that I was going to heal them. And so I would just wait for someone to fall. And no matter what the fall was, I was excited to be there with a paper towel or a napkin to wipe it off and then clean it and put a Band-Aid over it. My initial passion probably wasn't coming from a good place. It wasn't the already injured. I was like excited for these falls, but it translated into something great. So ever since I was 6, I was telling my parents I was going to be a nurse, and I would carry around that a first aid kit with me everywhere.
That's so cute. Did they get you the antiseptic kit because they already had an inclination that this was something that you'd be good at, or like was your mom or dad in the health profession?
That's funny. No, both my parents are my mom was actually in, IT.
Hmm.
So she was one of the, like, first women, groups of like, software, and my dad is in real estate.
So just
So my
like
parents met
nothing,
because my dad
nothing
yeah,
related.
no, there was nothing there. And my dad, he owned apartments growing up. He was, like, a very small businessman. He would scrimp and save so that he could buy small buildings and rent them out, and my parents met because my dad rented my mom an apartment,
Oh,
and they ended up working on that together. So every discussion around the table when I was little was about our apartments and us going to the apartments and like, as a kid, I would go with a fake vacuum cleaner and vacuum next to my mom, and every conversation was about how, we deal with all of the mishaps and things you wouldn't expect. No business goes according to plan.
yeah.
We said no animals in the apartments, and of course, a snake gets in and wraps itself around the electrical cords and blows up,
Oh my
part of the
gosh.
building. All the things you wouldn't expect. And so the conversations around the table since I was little were about entrepreneurship and kind of overcoming either adversities or
Just like troubleshooting.
problems. Yeah, troubleshooting. There's, no problem that can't be fixed somehow. So it wasn't about we can't do this because the problems. It's like we have this building and we're going to make this work and make sure we're creating good living environments for people and clean spaces for people to live and grow themselves. So that was the conversations growing up for sure. I owned like as a kid, I would have, like, lemonade
Yeah.
stands, or I had a vending machine at one point that I would go and fill every week. So there was all these little businesses kind of growing up that we enjoyed together. But ever since I was a kid, I had my 2 passions, and it was fashion and it was medicine.
Mhm.
I wanted to do everything medicine related. Every year I broke a bone, so I was in the
Oh my
hospital
god.
about every year with a broken bone or some sort of injury just because I was a little bit of a wild child.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I would come home and like the first thing I would do is take off my jacket and grab 2 blankets and make different outfits out of my 2 blankets. That was like something I loved to do. I'd walk in the door, and my mom had these 2 blankets ready, and I would like take off my socks and my jacket and over my clothes, I would make a little outfit with these 2 blankets.
Oh my
And it was always different every day.
that's so
So my
cute.
mom always knew that there was something to do with fashion there. So when I was in high school, I had been talking about being a nurse. I knew that's where I was headed.
Mhm.
I decided to go to a local hospital and be a volunteer. At this point, we were living in
Mhm.
California. So I moved to California. Our local hospital is actually the hospital I work at today. So I feel like I could tell people I've been there almost 15 years, which is absolute insanity when I think about it, actually over now. But it was the same local hospital I work at today. I would volunteer. And at that same time, for all the high school events, I would sew and design my own formal wear. So every homecoming, formal, prom, everything I wore was not only taken from a pattern, but completely from scratch designed by myself and then sewn.
This
And that was something I loved to do.
You're a busy girl because, first of all, hospitals are busy places. Even I think as a volunteer, there's no shortage of something to do all the time. So to be in high school, to be volunteering, and then also make time to like give yourself this creative space to create stuff, I mean, shows how much you were committed and loved doing it. And I love that your mom would just have like 2 blankets ready to go for you.
Oh, it was so cute. It was like my favorite thing to do. We'd come home, we'd get a snack, we'd make an
Yeah.
outfit, and then we'd like, do our projects around the house.
Yeah, I love that. Do you have any siblings? Or are you an only child?
Yeah, I have an older brother. His name's Jim. He has gone the real estate path,
Mhm.
which really was the best path. My dad's created a fairly successful business. It's a very small business,
Mhm.
but a successful small business, and kind of always thought that we'd work together and take it over. And I loved real estate, but I had these really strong innate passions since I was a kid and knew that this was something I had to explore
Yeah, yeah.
first.
Were your parents, like, very encouraging either way? Were they, like, pushing you toward one or the other, or did you just have, like, the freedom to kind of go for it?
They gave us the freedom to go for it. They always talked about having stability,
Mhm, mhm,
and that was really important. And as they were telling me about stability and growth, I kind of related that to my nursing
mhm.
because I figured if I can go and become a nurse, I'll have stability.
Yeah,
Nursing's a great path to be stable
mhm.
with a flexible schedule to explore opportunities that are important.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that people actually have misconceptions around because traditionally people think about nurses and they either think about candy stripers or they think about, like, just being in the hospital at bedside. There's a lot of different ways you can take it, just like there's a lot of different pathways you can take as like a lawyer or a medical doctor or, this, that, or the other thing. So I think it's really so impressive. And it's fun when I get to talk to other healthcare providers that have utilized nursing as sort of a launching pad to one, create stability, as you said, but also to give yourself the space to do other things. Like I have friends that have gone from healthcare into television writing and healthcare into entrepreneurship, such as yourself, or, Anna Rook from Akasha's partner, Alex. Like, he started out as a nurse, but now is, heading to really cool companies. So it's very, very fun to be able to watch the different directions that you can really take it.
You have to
Yeah.
be a planner to think that
Yes.
because most people look into healthcare and nursing as saying this is such a deep path that's going to take so much time that I'm never going to have time to do anything
Mhm.
else. And it's so untrue
Mhm.
because nursing is 4 years. It's a hard 4 years. And there now things are a little different in the field. Like there's the TEAS test
Mhm.
and there's a couple prerequisites that have to be done before nursing. So maybe you could say it's a 5, 6 year plan.
Mhm.
But in 6 years, you're 6 years older. So what have you worked towards in those 6 years to get to that place?
Mhm.
And 6 years in the span of a lifetime just isn't that long.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you can get the hard work done ahead of time and have the stability and then work off of that stability, whether it's staying, fully in the nursing field and figuring out what specialty you love, or staying partially in the nursing field and translating it into your other deep passion, it's a great path as long as it's making you happy.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point too. It's like if you create the time and the energy for it, it's there. It's there. So let's talk about nursing school a little bit. It sounds like you kind of just knew what you wanted to do, and you knew that nursing was going to be the initial first path that you took. So when you got into nursing school, did you have this idea in your head already that you were going to like set up your career and then take it one step further by, starting your own scrub line or apparel line, or like, that you were going to be in the fashion industry in some sense?
That's a good question. I always had a 10-year plan. Like since I was 15, I was like, here's my 10-year plan. So I was definitely a planner, which was good for
Yeah.
this field.
Yeah.
And that is not everyone.
Yeah.
So it is important to kind of like figure out what you're best at and kind of taking that to make a plan that you know you'll stick with. Where when I decided this was plan A and I had plan B, like one of those two things were going to happen.
Mhm.
So when I was really young, I knew I was going to be a nurse and I knew I wanted to, by the time I was in high school, so 15, I knew I wanted to go on and be a nurse practitioner.
Mhm.
Those were the two things in my head that were really important. I was also at the hospital at that time saying, like, "Ew, these scrubs are like not flattering. They don't look comfortable. Every person who bends over, like their chest is exposed or their underwear hanging out the back." I was like, why don't we have like clothes that
Or
move
you're
with us?
afraid that they're
That
going
was my
to.
initial thought. Like,
Yeah. It's like in the ER, you're like, "Don't
like,
move too quickly lest it, like, rip," because like, while you're trying to, like, help somebody.
yeah, that was back in the day when like everything was just pure
Mhm.
stiff and cotton.
Yeah.
And so I remember seeing that and being like, wow, there's definitely something I could make here. It would be really cool to start a scrub company. That was a thought. But then, I turned 17 or 18, went to college. I was
Mhm.
a little bit young for my grade, finished school, came and got a job right away in a new grad program here in San Diego. And that's when I was fully focused on becoming a nurse practitioner. So I worked like for a year knowing I was going to become an NP. And at the same time, I was kind of changing things about my scrubs.
Mhm.
So I'd buy scrubs, I would add to them, I would wear a fanny pack. I had like a process that I liked where I had everything on me, but I didn't feel, exposed or like
Mhm.
my pockets were too full and my pants were falling down. So I'd like add stuff to the scrubs to make me happy. And then I went to grad school and got my doctorate. And through my doctorate, towards the last year, is when the scrub company started coming back up in my head.
Mhm.
I had a partner at the time who we were planning on getting married. And in the process, we decided he's an ER doc.
Mhm.
We decided to start a hormonal therapy clinic because that was kind of what he wanted to
Yeah.
do. He was like, we work in emergency medicine. I was doing all my clinicals in emergency medicine because I was getting my family license, but I was also getting my emergency license at
Mhm.
the same time. And so I had this plan to be in ER medicine, but then we were like, oh, should we take this a different path, start a hormonal therapy clinic? My parents are in the real estate industry. We could find, good property and maybe do, we're thinking outside the box. And all I was contributing at the time was I wanted to sell scrubs in the front office. So I was like, I mean, I'll contribute more. At the time, I was going to all the hormonal therapy
Mhm.
conferences. So I was bringing back all the information for the both of us.
But the part that was really
But
piquing your
as I'm at the
interest.
conferences, I
Yeah.
was like, I really can't wait to start this thing so I can sell scrubs in the front office. And as I started to explore that, I was like, this isn't going to make any money. It would be really fun for me. So I'm going to do it anyways.
Yeah.
But this isn't financially a good fiscal plan.
Mhm. Mhm.
And right before we kind of put the pieces together on this business, the relationship didn't work
Mhm.
and we kind of suddenly broke up. And I was devastated.
Yeah.
Found out he had been cheating on me. I was
Oh
totally
god.
devastated. I was just in a bad space. I was starting 2 brand new ER jobs here in town in addition to keeping my old nursing job, and I was devastated. And my good girlfriend and I went on a little trip for 3 days, and she was like, "Kathryn, you didn't even want to start this hormonal therapy clinic. Why don't you just sell scrubs? That's all you've talked to me about. And this business is so much more than what you were gonna sell in the front office." And I said, "Julia, you are right. This is ridiculous." And the next
Shout out
day
to
I
Julia.
contacted I know, shout out to Julia. She was like, "This is absurd. What are you doing? You talk about is scrubs. Why don't you start the scrub company?"
Mhm.
And truly the next day I was researching what to do. I wasn't able to sleep at night because I was going through kind of this traumatic breakup. And I said, I'm not going to put one more minute of focus on this guy. I'm going to use this time to benefit myself. If I can't sleep at night, I'm going to be building something.
Mhm.
And I decided this is what I was going to build.
I love how you translated because so many of the women that we've talked to, I think one of the really cool things is like life never totally goes the way you plan it, right? So like I hear you saying that like you are very, you know, I don't know if type A would be the right way to describe it, but just like you have a
Yeah,
plan.
probably.
You have a plan in place. You had like this, these foundational beliefs about how you wanted things to go and you've always still worked toward that, but like these obstacles that got in the way kind of like shook that plan a little bit. It's never easy to break up with somebody, even under the best of circumstances. I think like making and breaking relationships is, those transitional periods are very difficult. And so when it happens in a traumatic way, you can either sink into yourself or you can do what you did, which is kind of use it to fuel this next step in your life. It's it's really interesting to hear that you like use these sleepless nights to start doing the research.
Yeah. And at the time, I was like, okay, I can't sleep at night. So I realized I was like, I don't know much about manufacturing. So I started learning all the things about
Mhm.
manufacturing during the day and night. But because Asia is on a different time frame from us, I just started booking 2 a.m. meetings. And I was like, I'm not going to sleep at night. So at 2 in the morning, I'm going to have a meeting with someone across the world so that we can talk about fabrics or colors or design. And as I went through this process, this process was crazy.
Yeah.
I'd be up at 2 in the morning realizing that I had no translator, and so just to get someone's email, we would be completely struggling. I'm like, "A as in apple?" And then they'd be like it was just
Yeah.
impossible to
Yeah.
communicate. And I always kind of had this dream that everything would be USA made, and so I used that time to talk to people in Asia so I understood a manufacturing market because you can't really ignore that pretty much all of our manufacturing comes from Asia. So if you
Mhm.
don't know something about that market, you don't know what your options are, your possibilities in a manufacturing textile company.
Mhm.
So it was just good. It was a good learning. I mean, every company has their due diligence period, and that was those first 2 months was every single day was a due diligence period of deciding how I was going to put this thing together. And I had some really great ideas for how to change the scrub market
Mhm.
enough to make them innovative without changing them completely. And so I contacted attorneys right away, decided I was going to put the money that I had put aside for this other business into attorneys and accountant plans, fees. And I was so delusional at the time, thinking that I could do this, that it worked. But it all came from pure delusion, truly.
Well, I think that's sort of, where I'm laughing because, and I'm sure Asha would laugh too. There is that sense of like delusion where you're just kind of like, this is going to happen. I'm going to do it. But we actually like just had this very interesting conversation about the difference between like the woo woo version of manifestation and like what we actually do as like business owners. So there's like the version where you're like, it's the quote unquote delusion where you're like, I'm gonna have this scrub company and it's just gonna happen. Like, it's just gonna be successful. I'm gonna create everything I wanna create. It's gonna be so great and I'm gonna make a lot of money and it's gonna fulfill me. And then there's the real version, which is no, you've gotta stay up until 2 like, you write out your dreams, like, I wanna have this scrub company. But then there's all these steps, like, part of it is, like, logging the hours, like, staying up, doing the 2 AM meetings, realizing you can't even communicate with this person who's in Asia, but it's, like, essential for you to learn this. And then, like, beating your head against the wall, rinse, repeat over and over again until, like, suddenly things start to, like, click and turn into progress, you know? That's, like, the part that is both very difficult, but I think also so rewarding because when you like, I'm sure at the end of that 2 months, you turned around and you're like, "Wow, I have such a better understanding of this landscape and, like, what direction I need to go in next in order to really make this happen."
Yeah, it's rewarding, and at the same time, it's very lonely
Yeah.
because you've done this incredible thing, like, every Hollywood movie about someone who's done something great, they fast forward through all the hard work because it's
Mhm.
boring.
Mhm.
And then you build something, you're like, "Wow, I worked so hard at this." And you try to tell someone, and it just doesn't translate. It's why having a community of entrepreneurs is really important because it is
Mhm.
such a lonely process that unless you
Yeah.
have that deep fire to share your story, even in an entrepreneur group, everyone has such different versions of what their difficult story
Mhm.
was. I mean, I started this company, I went to my dad, and my parents know every plan that I've told them I'm gonna do, if it was riding on my shoulders, I did it. There was nothing I didn't
Mhm.
do that I told him I was gonna do. When I was 8, I asked my dad if he wanted to travel where he would wanna go, and he said, "Australia." And I said, "Don't go. I will take you one day." And when I graduated from nursing school, I I graduated at 20, I turned 21 that summer, and my first year of nursing, I had a bank account, just put money towards it for our trip to Australia, and I ended up taking him. And so I came to my dad when I built this company and I said, "Dad, I need some money. Would you invest, you know, some of the money into this company?" And he looked at it. We went out to lunch. He looked at it and he was like, "Yeah, this is just a risky investment. This isn't something I'm not a risky investor. I don't want to put my money towards this." I was so furious. I mean, talk about being fiery and then being shut down by your really supportive father who has, like, been
Were
there
you just
since.
not you were probably not expecting that reaction, right?
No, of course not. Of course not. And he's like, "Look, you're in a bad place. Let's, like, get you out of this, and, like, let's not put money towards this crazy business adventure that you have now decided to spiral into." And I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
talk to him for 3 months while I, like, built the rest of this thing, created a financial plan. I got some other mentors
Yeah.
who were I had people who actually offered to put money into it. I said, until I see a really clear path of where every cent is going for this business, I'm not
Mhm.
gonna take any money in." And they said, "When you're ready, come back." And actually, right now is probably where I'd be able to tell you exactly where every cent of this business is gonna go, and how much I expect to make out of it. So this would like, today is probably like this month or so is about the time that I would be willing to accept money because it's just such a hard I mean, I'm 5 years in, and it's so hard to build something and actually know what to expect
Yeah.
because every month you're just fighting against another hurdle. God, every day you're
Yeah.
fighting another hurdle to start a company. It just yeah,
Yeah.
if I wasn't so upset and fiery at the time I started this company, I don't know if I would have had the bandwidth to make it work.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing the anecdote of your dad just flat out saying no. And it wasn't like he was being mean about it, but he was being super pragmatic. And there's probably also a part of him that's like, she just went through this, like, traumatic breakup. Like, there's probably a level in his head of like being dad, like trying to protect you from yourself or his like perceived, notions of like what you were potentially going to get yourself into. But I really admire that you went for it anyways, and that it just created more of a pivot point and like a fork in the road for you to just say, I'm still going to go this way. I'm still going to choose this path and just figure it out.
Yeah. Well, now I have a good financial plan. My dad has since come to me, he's like, "What do you need to get this thing really running?"
You're
So I
like,
was
you
like,
could have
"No,
gotten
I
in
don't
from the
know."
beginning. You could have gone in from jump. Um,
No, but they've been super supportive. My dad, his background's accounting.
yeah,
So he was an accountant, had an accounting firm, and then kind of started going into real estate. And so numbers are so important. He needs to see
yeah,
what the, rate of return is gonna be and what the timeline's gonna be. And he was like, "Yeah, Dad, this is so unknown, out of my scope."
yeah.
Um,
Sometimes you
so
just have to jump into it and figure it out. I mean, sometimes there's not like a clear pathway until you finally start getting in and like trudging through the mud, really. How very cool that he's like turned around and been like, yeah, what do you need? How did you know where to start looking? Like when your dad said, okay, I don't think that this is going to be a good investment for me. And you decided I'm going to do this anyways. And you looked for mentors and you looked for resources in order to get this off the ground and gain an understanding of what you needed to do. How did you kind of walk yourself down that path?
yeah, Google. I mean, it was all Google searches. So I went online, I said, "I need an attorney." I looked on Google. So right away, I went to Google and just started searching things and
Hmm.
and looking things up. I would get advice from a variation of people. So I'd look at kind of the middle of the road, the attorneys that I was very likely to hire, given that this is just all the money that I'd made from nursing, trying to go into this as I'm supporting myself. And then I always would interview someone who was top of their game, very expensive attorney, someone who I would think that maybe could help more. And so I'd get a variation of who I was trying to deal with, what more finances could support and how that could affect my business. So I went to Google, I'd look up a bunch of attorneys, I'd interview at least 3. Now that I lost my accountant, I out of my own stubbornness, I looked at Google, I looked up accountants for corporate and interviewed accountants. And then the manufacturing was really the big one because I've
Hmm.
sewn and designed dresses. I've never made pants. I've never dealt with manufacturing. And that's a whole area of study on itself. I
Yeah.
mean, just to start this business, I should have had a master's in manufacturing, an MBA, all the things that I didn't have to get this thing up and running. What I knew was my product market fit
Hmm.
and the problem that I was trying to fix for my business, which we'll get into later. But what I didn't know was how to get this thing off the ground.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about patent law or trademarks or corporate accounting, manufacturing, travel, shipping, just knowing about shipping costs, adding a ton of money onto everything that you're trying to
Hmm.
do. I didn't know that there was different places for cutting versus sewing, the customs that you were involved in manufacturing overseas or just getting items overseas. I didn't know that, how to process payments with if they were tax free since I'm selling something or I mean, I've just had to struggle through every one of these hurdles.
Hmm.
And I didn't know that there was a small business center in town that for free would have answered all of my initial questions. And my biggest regret is not going to a small business center. I just didn't know they were available, willing to help, and paid for with our tax money to support small businesses or people who just have an idea to get them up and running. That first accountant interview, that first attorney interview could have been through the small business center with people who just want to see you succeed
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
have already run very successful companies.
Do you utilize them now still, like down the road for
Yes.
questions and
Oh,
everything?
they're amazing. And you don't need a degree in anything. You're starting your own company. They have all of these classes. that are just designed to, I had questions about maybe selling to the government and
Mhm.
doing procurement,
Mhm.
and they have all of the information laid out and a process handed to you. I talked to people from the Brink, um, the Small Business Center. I talked to people from SCORE, and every one of these volunteers, they're incredible and their information's completely invaluable. And when you're starting a business, it kind of seems like everyone's coming in trying to get a piece of you
Mhm. Mhm.
for the potential. And to actually talk with someone who doesn't have any skin in the game, not asking for any money, I got screwed over so many times trying to start this business in the beginning, and it made me very bitter. And this was just an incredible resource that I could have had that didn't just feel like fighting against the world in that first year or two.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you really pit yourself up against a lot of adversity. I mean, you were coming off of this relationship, like you didn't necessarily, not that your parents weren't supportive, but you didn't necessarily have like an entrepreneurial support system at that time. So you really had to just do the work. How did you start to develop your community and like realize where your resources laid? Was it just like a part of like, it just had to unfold naturally? Like, how did you realize that, like, you could meet other entrepreneurs and, like, have these learnings and not just be in this, like, alone, like you said?
Yeah, a delusion came into play
Mhm.
there. So I'd go to the hospital and I'd tell people, I'm starting a scrub company. It's going to be great. Had no idea what my timeline
Yeah.
was going to be. Had no idea that the scrubs weren't coming out in the next year. I just figure if someone else, it takes someone else 3 to 5 years to do it, I'll do it in a year.
Mhm.
No problem. I'll stay up. I'll put the work in. I'll put the hours and I'm going to make it happen. That's just not how it works. I had so much confidence in myself for some reason that right away I'd started like a social media and everyone at the hospital, people I had no idea. I'd be in passing. I'd be like, hey, it looks like you could use some new scrubs and I'm starting a scrub company. Would you please follow my scrub company? EMTs that came in, I was like, I'm not sure what your end goal is, but I've got this scrub company that I'm trying to make. Can you please follow me on social media? Oh, you need help wiping up your patient? I'll do it. Do you have an Instagram? Can you follow me on Instagram? Like
You're patient, you're
the
like
most embarrassing. Oh my gosh. I look at the Catherine a few years ago. I'm like, oh, it's so embarrassing the things that I did. But then I got the Instagram kind of up and running, and then I started messaging other people who looked like they were starting stuff, whether they are San Diego entrepreneurs or
Mhm.
medical entrepreneurs or like, of course, nursing entrepreneurs. And I'd say, hey, I could really use an ear if, and I really want to hear your story so I can learn from,
Yeah.
what you've done. And it's tough. You put like 20 of those messages out and you maybe get one in return. I mean, I read the Nike book
Yeah.
and I think he's amazing. I saw a lot of similarities in his story and I sent him a
Mhm.
few letters, handwritten letters. I never heard back, but doesn't stop. I've sent a message to Taylor Swift's Instagram yesterday because I was like, hey, these scrubs are so comfortable. I know you're not in medicine, but if you could just try on the pants to go to the gym in, you will not regret it. Like I remember like in the very beginning messaging Ellen being like, "Look, you are gonna want to hear this story." No, my story is terrible. It was like in the beginning, right? But I was messaging like the small businesses, the big people,
Yeah.
there was no door I wasn't gonna go knocking on.
I
Sure.
really
They'll read it, they'll laugh maybe they won't read it, maybe they'll reply in 10 years, who knows?
So I really admire this resilience and we're laughing about it, but this is really hard for most people to do. I don't think that what you're conveying is that it was easy for you by any means, but where does this like, this chutzpah come from? Like where did you pull this boldness out of and how did you curate that confidence in yourself in order to reach out to Ellen or reach out to Taylor Swift or tell people in the hallway, I'm starting this scrub company.
Yeah, I've never been a shy kid, um, So that was helpful. And when
Yeah.
you're starting something new, like, you're gonna put that much time and
Yeah.
money and energy, you're excited.
Mhm.
What people don't know is that excitement kind of ebbs and flows. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes I feel great about it. Sometimes I feel like, what is this hobby that I'm like trying to put together? And then other times I'm like, I started a company. That's amazing. So this confident like ebbs and flows. But in the beginning, when you were like full fledged, so when I was a little girl, my mom used to say, the answer is no. I don't know what you don't understand, if it's the N or the O, but the answer is no. And but we did have this rule that at the table, we could sit at the table, and if, in the moment, if my parents said no to something, the answer was no. But I could rebuttal it at the table
Mhm.
where it was an appropriate place to discuss it. So we were allowed to sit down at the table and say, I don't like that you said no to movie night with friends, whatever it was. So I think I should be able to do that if I accomplish something else.
Mhm. Mhm.
There shouldn't be like a limit to what I'm allowed to do if it's a reasonable ask. But in the moment, I had to listen to my parents.
Mhm. So did that's actually brilliant. I mean, my son's only 16 months, but I think I'm gonna tuck that one away in my back pocket for like 10 years down the road. Because negotiation is actually such an important part of everyday interactions. Like we negotiate with ourselves, we negotiate with other people, and you certainly have to negotiate in order to create a successful business. So I feel like that was a really cool foundation. Did they just out of curiosity, if you were to provide a meaningful and, like, effective rebuttal to something they said no to, did the outcome ever get overturned?
Yeah, definitely. And, I'm forgetting a lot of the conversations we had back then. I remember one of them was over a sleepover that I
Mhm,
wanted to go to that my parents were like, no, we're not. It was, I think it was my senior year of high school, and there was some sort of like party that I wanted to go to. And I was like, I'll just stay the night. And my parents were like, yeah, absolutely, absolutely not. You're not going to stay the night. And it was like an hour away. So people are going, like, I think it was like for a birthday
mhm,
party. I can't remember the details, but it was something like maybe it was for a birthday party. Everyone was going to stay. And my parents said, absolutely not. But I said, look, like, all my friends are going to this. It's really important to me. And I think I should be able to go. And we came to the conclusion, I can't remember how it came. My dad was like, you know what? I'll go when you're ready to go. You're not staying, but when everyone's going to sleep or whatever, I will be around that area and I'll pick you up and we'll, like, then you'll leave. And that was
compromise.
the negotiation.
Yeah.
That was the compromise. And I was like, "Yeah, great, even better. I get to sleep in my bed. I get to go to the party."
I
But I
appreciate
remember everything was kind of this negotiation. It was like if we were talking about it at school as my parents were picking me up, the answer is no, you're not going, period.
Yes,
And I had to be okay with that. But then when we got to dinner, I was like, "Okay, you say no, but,
yes,
like,
yeah,
this is one of those opportunities." I remember one of my best friends at the time, I had like a curfew, and he was like, "Here's our plans of what we're gonna do. So we're gonna be late on the curfew, but here's the plans, and like you can, you know, watch us on our phones or whatever."
mhm.
And it was like really innocent, fun things that we went to go do as like a friend group. And they were like, "Yeah, that's fine." And they said the new curfew for this night is gonna be this. And so they were really flexible
Yeah, within
within the
reason.
guides of they
Yeah,
were trying to provide safety. So, like, there's an end goal, and I can reach that goal that they have and the goal that I have
yeah.
with something, then it was fine.
I think it translates really well into small business ownership or just business ownership in general and entrepreneurship because when you are met with a challenge like in the business world, a lot of people who fold, a lot of people who aren't successful like venturing out after their main goals or dreams or desires, are those that are very rigid in their thinking. So they hear the word no or they meet an obstacle and they think, okay, well, that is what it is. When in reality, it's a no, but I'm sure like there's another way to navigate it. There's another way to accomplish what you want to accomplish. It just might not look like the original design, or the original way that you'd imagined it in your head.
It depends on why that person is saying no. It's
Yeah.
like, are
Yeah.
they saying no because it's money out of their pocket? Are they saying no because it doesn't seem like a good end plan, or they're just not interested in the field?
Mhm.
And so if it's the field, then you make it financially pleasing.
Mhm.
If it's the finances, you make it so that there's payments throughout the like, if you find an alignment with the person that's saying no,
Mhm.
you can figure out how to make a
Yeah.
teamship out of it.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable too that you're sharing that, Catherine, because it's almost you're taking it one step further. It's not even just that you're meeting the challenge and like figuring out a way to do it. You're actually asking the questions that are important. It's like you're trying to figure out how you align with the other person, as you said, in order to meet a common goal. And I can really see how well your parents served you in that regard with giving you a safe space to negotiate and to understand like what their goals were versus your goals and how to kind of like meet in the middle and how that's really translated into all these successful, crucial conversations playing out over the course of, like, your business life.
Yeah, it's been great, and knowing who you're talking to.
Mhm.
So, with that, everyone's gonna have a different goal, so knowing that person that you're talking to and what their goal is, if I'm gonna ask for money, I'm gonna talk to the people about my proprietary stethoscope holder and the things that really change the game for the medical industry. If
Mhm.
I'm talking to a nurse who's gonna buy the scrubs, I know based on my research that comfort is the number one game changer in their book.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna tell them about the really comfortable fabrics that I have and the 8 pockets in the pant. And yes, there's a place to put your stethoscope, which is amazing in itself, but they wanna be comfortable at work. They wanna be checking their chest tubes and not having their underwear hang out the back. And they wanna be leaning over patients without having to put their hand over their chest and worried about how their clothes are moving with them. They're there to do a job that's very athletic, so they should be wearing athletic materials
Mhm.
and comfortable.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's super valuable. I also wanna talk a little bit more about how you came up with the design for your scrubs and the innovations that you added to them, because that's a big part of this. I mean, we've talked a lot about the business challenges and what it was like building, but I really wanna pick your brain on the creative side of it, like what brought you into this in the first place?
My first nursing job. I went to work, I wore some dicky pants that were always falling down, and the tops, I kind of forgo the traditional scrub top, and I would wear a long sleeve with a jacket because the scrub tops are super uncomfortable in the way that the shoulder hit my jacket. So if I was cold and put a jacket on, I felt this big lump of fabric underneath where the end of the sleeve was in the scrubs. And then I just felt like they puffed out in the top. And then on top of that, the V-neck was so low on the top that even though I'm wearing this bag, I'm leaning over my patients and I have to be worried about my chest being exposed. It just didn't make any sense. And so I kind of wore something a little bit different my first year just because I didn't like the traditional scrub top and scrub bottom. And then through that year, I was like, why is my stethoscope around my neck? I was getting a bad rash because of the chemicals. I heard terrible stories of people getting injured from the stethoscope being around the neck. And I just thought, like, this is crazy. We have all this PPE and the whole get up to get in these rooms. And then we take this disgusting stethoscope and we either make it disgusting by putting in these really harsh chemicals and then putting it directly on our skin because no one's waiting 3 minutes before putting it
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
or we're touching patients and then we're putting it directly on our face, hair, and neck.
Mhm.
And just seem for anything else, you wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
So why are we doing that with our stethoscope? Then, as I was starting the scrub company, I was doing more research and I designed the stethoscope holder within the waistband where I thought it was the best placement for it. And as I was doing the research, I was finding there was a 2019 Cambridge study that showed 100% of stethoscopes after one patient use had staph and other bacteria.
Oh,
And we're putting that around our neck.
yeah. Yeah.
And then it was, in the middle of COVID times, violence in the workplace has over doubled since
Yeah.
COVID. So I'd start posting about these issues with the stethoscope and talking about the placement of my stethoscope holder, I have had so many messages from people saying, I wish these were out and I
Yeah.
invested in them early on because I'm no longer in the nursing field due to a patient injury.
Oh my
Because
god.
someone pulled me over
With their
a
stethoscope.
bed by my stethoscope that was around my neck. And you go into any ER now, as you know,
Mhm.
people just don't wear stethoscopes anymore because it's more of a danger to us. So why aren't we taking care of our own health? If
Mhm.
we have to invest in our own scrubs, we want to wear the scrubs that we're going to be most comfortable in and that are going to keep us
And that are
safe from
functional.
bacteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, and safe from the violence of other patients.
Yeah.
It was funny. I actually made a post today on TikTok and someone literally replied. It was so funny. And as I was reading it, it just resonated with me. Someone messaged saying, "ER nurse here. What is a stethoscope?" Question mark. And I thought it was so, and it's like, yeah, isn't that sad? Our main diagnostic device,
You
and we
can't
don't
even
wear
wear it.
them because
Yeah.
we don't want to injure ourselves
Or
by
they get
having to wear
stolen.
them. But the stethoscope holder that I made
Yeah.
fixes all of that. You
Yeah.
have the stethoscope on you all the time. Don't even feel it. You don't know it's
Yeah.
even there until you want to use it and pull it out. But if someone else grabbed it, it would come right out of the holder. With that said, you can do cartwheels and handstands with this
And
thing
it'll stay
because
on.
yeah, until you go to pull on the stethoscope, it's stuck into an elastic band. And if you pulled it, it won't pull your pants forward. It'll just pull out of the elastic band.
Yeah.
So it is kind of funny seeing this. I was in a code the other day and a patient passed away and everyone looked around. They're like, "Does anyone have any ears?" And I was the only one with a stethoscope on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just kind of like, this is so sad.
Yeah.
Our main diagnostic device, and we're not using it, which means your patients aren't properly being
Yeah.
assessed. We're ordering all these x-rays, CTs on things that really we could probably first be doing proper
Yeah.
assessments for, but we don't have our stethoscope.
Yeah. I really love that you recognized a problem and then, you know, created this entire company based on solving that issue and that you've done it by putting one foot in front of the other and like meeting each of these challenges head on and like really trying to solve the problem in a very like authentic and meaningful way. Like it's not like you just were like, okay, let me make something pretty that's going to make me a lot of money or like, okay, let me just make like something that will hold it. But you even were so thoughtful about it in the sense that you're like, okay, if I'm doing a cartwheel or if a patient pulls on it, like you've done your research and your diligence. And I think that is it's really incredible to see what you've built. And I know you keep
Well,
mentioning the delusion, but it's really just been big dreams and then hard work to follow it up.
yeah, and there's research and due
Mhm.
diligence that you have to do.
Mhm.
And then there's just starting to build something and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
So I made version 1 in the middle of COVID. That's a whole nother story. It was just I got it was such a hard process
Mhm.
manufacturing something in the middle of COVID. That was just so unfortunate. And I lost a lot of money putting money into manufacturing and then they just shut down and go bankrupt.
Mm.
Which was sad. But you you build something and you just have to start trying it.
Did you sew your own prototypes?
I made the first pants kind of based off other pants
Mhm.
and then decided to start from scratch.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't working. The stethoscope holder doesn't work when it's on other pants because the pants have to be a certain material
Mhm.
to distribute the weight around the hips.
Mhm.
And so the initial ones didn't work. So I just started researching. I interviewed some pattern makers and a sample
Mhm.
person who just, straight out robbed me in the end
Oh,
because they say it's going to cost one thing and then they don't give you your samples until you pay them more, which
yeah.
was just so sad. But then you have a product and the product was terrible, terrible. It was so ugly. The fabrics I chose were the wrong fabrics. And it was about 8 samples later that I looked at it and I said, wow, I built that. That's
Mhm.
incredible. They're so comfortable. I can't imagine going to work without this pair of pants. And I manufactured them. And they came out and there were a ton of issues. I had some fit issues. I did my very best scaling them. I interviewed lots of people. I didn't put money into the manufacturing, the large scale, well, small scale, but large scale in my
Mhm.
opinion, because I was just making these samples. I didn't put any money into the large scale manufacturing until I thought I had really good patterns, really good samples. And they just, as people with different body types put them on, they just weren't perfect.
Mhm.
So the second version, and we're talking this is years apart. The second version, they're just night and day better. And I thought my first version was night and day better than every sample that I'd
Yeah.
had before. But this second version really every time I finally get them on people, I get a sale and I send them, I get messages back just saying how much they like them. So the new black scrubs, which is what I'm wearing now,
Mhm.
just purely because they're comfortable for this interview. The new black version, I haven't had one return, and I've sold over 100 sets so far.
That's so
And
incredible.
that was a very different conversion rate than the first version with good reason.
That's so incredible. At the heart of all of this, like, you still practice in the hospital, and you are still, like, working your butt off at this, scrub company, All of Us. What do you see as being, like, the next thing?
I have very clear next steps in my head.
Mhm.
Some of it I'll disclose, some of it I won't.
Mhm.
But to be as transparent as possible, my next step is I love working in the hospital. You don't dream of doing this since you were a kid because kids just don't think about money in that way, you
Mhm.
know? In the nursing field, you do make pretty good money, and it's a great, stable career that helps me well diversify myself so I can like mentally think about moving something else that's so risky for it.
Mhm.
You should never have your primary investment be as risky as the scrub business, which is what I've now done to myself. But you do want to well diversify yourself so that you can handle coming up home and not being able to sleep without thinking, gosh, I don't make these sales. I'm
Mhm. Mhm.
really in a bad place here. So my nursing career has been a phenomenal way of doing something I love. I feel like my head is clear when I'm in the hospital. I can think about, you know, part of the reason this whole scrub company has worked because I get to go back to the hospital, wear them, show them off, make changes based on when you're moving around the hospital, finding things. No one's going to take as much interest in your company as yourself.
Mhm.
You need to be there, be present, be wearing them, be making changes, and then be doing as much research as possible on the people who wear them, buy them, have ideas. But you asked about nursing. Yeah, I can't imagine not working in the hospital. So I work 1 day a week as a nurse.
Mhm.
I get full benefits working there. And then when I need money, which is often, I pick up shifts. And when I have stuff going on for the scrubs that I need to pay attention to, then I don't pick up shifts and I just spend all day working on the scrubs.
Yeah.
So starting a company is not very glamorous because it's 24/7,
Mhm.
where going to my nursing jobs, you're there for 12 hours and when you leave, you leave.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's my like rule to myself is when I leave, I leave. But then I also work as an emergency nurse practitioner and I have a great situation. I work for a phenomenal group where I just pick up shifts and I just get paid hourly on my shifts.
Yeah. I love that, and I
There's no
really I
minimum.
really appreciate your journey and, how dedicated you are to your own goals and dreams, and, you've just done it. I keep saying you just kept doing the work, but, like, that's what it is. That's what it is to be an entrepreneur, and I love that you're doing it in such a way that acknowledges the 2 things that really fulfill you, which are fashion and medicine. I would love to keep picking your brain for hours and hours, and I'm sure we're gonna get a lot of questions from our listeners just, looking to you as a resource and a wealth of knowledge on all of this. But in the interest of saving your afternoon and getting you to the Super Bowl, and which I think is actually like happening right now. But I'd love to transition into our fast five, which are just, 5 quick questions to kind of shake off like some of the seriousness of our interview and transition into our final question.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, number 1, what is the favorite feature of your current scrub design?
Hands down the stethoscope holder.
I had a feeling.
The research, I had 5 marketing students from USD go through all the research of what nurses
Yeah.
want, and number 1 was
Yeah.
comfort. But the stethoscope holder is just a game
Yeah.
changer for me. I can't go back to wearing the stethoscope around my shoulders, and it works great
Yeah.
in the holder that I created.
I'm excited to gift these to a lot of people. I'm like, okay, number 2. You have created such a busy schedule for yourself. How do you unwind and refill your cup after like a long day shift or, a long day of entrepreneurship?
I have great friends. I have a phenomenal boyfriend. He's also an entrepreneur himself, so it's really nice
Yeah.
being able to wind down when we're at the table. We keep our phones away and we just get to kind of enjoy the things that happen throughout the day and our challenges that seem so similar and so different at the same
Mhm.
time. But the schedule is pretty flexible.
Mhm.
It's that I fill it up because these things make me happy
Yeah.
and I see it going somewhere that fulfills me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you're acknowledging that. Number 3, where do you find your creative inspiration?
For me, I've never been like very artistically inclined or musically inclined like my brother. And this just seems to make sense in my head because I'm more of a math and science gal.
Mhm.
And the scrubs, putting them together is all about just creating the right space and numbers. And it's more of like a geometry
Mhm.
thing than it is really quote unquote artistic.
Yeah.
So the designs just seem to make sense based on what I'm trying to put in the scrubs. So I need a place for my stethoscope. I have to have a
Mhm.
holder. I need a place for my phones. I need appropriate pockets for the phones. I need a place, you pull your phone out and your credit card and ID go
Yeah.
flying. That's a challenge you shouldn't have to address at work. So I have a credit card and ID holder in the pocket.
Like, as they
Like
slide
they just
across the
seem
dirty hospital floor.
totally, or you lose them.
Yeah.
Like those things would be gone in a
Mhm.
heartbeat. So it's more that it's like I can sit down and start drawing designs,
Mhm.
and it's not because my penmanship's very good or my art is very beautiful, but it's just something that makes sense in my head of where spatially to put things and what would be comfortable and how to improve the fit based on what things look like and how they translate on people's bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. This brings me to question 4. Do you still sew for fun?
I don't sew for fun anymore. And I think it's because I realized how expensive it is. I'd much rather put the money into the scrubs
Yeah.
than because the scrubs are like it's my company, my
Yeah, it's
hobby.
you're just all
Where
in.
yeah, I mean, as a kid in high school, and it's much more expensive to make stuff now than
Yeah.
it was in high school. In high school, I would spend over double the amount on my dresses than if you went to the store and bought a dress from
Really?
scratch. Yeah, I mean, the silks that I would pick out and the materials that I would pick out, it ended up being much more expensive. And my dad at the time said, if you're gonna go to a dance and you want a certain dress, you have to work and pay for your dress. If you are educationally going to be going and building this dress from scratch and learning something through
Yeah.
the process, I will pay for the expenses to do this hobby and
Yeah.
educate yourself on something that's totally different. And so I would build the dresses. My dad would help pay for them. Where my clothes as a kid, I mean, I was a
Yeah.
babysitter and I worked in a lot of fashion. Um, I used to sell like jeans and those you'd buy jeans at like a discounted rate because they were
Mhm,
imperfect, the
mhm, mhm.
designer jeans, and I would have designer jean sales. Forgot about that. That's back in high school. So this was kind of like a good way of bringing the things I knew and translating it. So I don't sew anymore for fun in that way, but I'm constantly improving my current
Yeah.
designs, and that's more fun for me.
Yeah. So it's sort of transitioned a little bit. In terms of
Yeah.
design, because you did send in, you sent us a lot of pictures. I'm excited to share some of these designs that you created when you were in high school, like for formal and everything. So I'm curious, number 5, what is your favorite thing you've ever designed that is not a scrub?
Oh, I had some really cool dresses in high school, and they were always weird. Like, I was always on the weird like, a little bit weird side, and so I wanted something that was
Yeah.
different. I never wanted something that I could buy at the store that was the same as everyone else. So I wanted everything to be different about it, and there was a dress that I made that was all silk. It was pink. It was a floor-length dress. I created a slit in it, and then I made all these handmade beautiful flowers that was, like, across one shoulder. It was just a beautiful dress, like, to look at the inseams of the dress where it was all lined
Yeah.
and the flowers were all hand done, and then my mom made all the jewelry,
Mhm.
so she went and bought some, like, Swarovski crystals and stuff like that, and she handmade the necklace and earrings that went with it,
Mhm.
and my dad took me out shoe shopping and bought me some shoes, so, like, the whole outfit together was kind of this, like family
Aw,
doing. It was a total family affair to get this whole outfit together between the jewelry, the
the
dress,
shoes.
and my dad taking me shoe
Aw.
shopping and helping pay for the materials to go into the dress. It was probably my favorite piece just because it felt good to do something with my
Do you
family.
still have it?
Yeah, I still
Oh
have
my
it.
gosh.
My parents keep all my dresses in
You
bags,
have to send
at the
pictures.
house to try to protect
You
them.
have to send pictures. It's amazing. Well, this has been so much fun. I want to ask you our closing question. We ask it of all of the guests that come on the show. What is one quality you had as a teen girl or young woman that you might not have taken pride in then, but you really appreciate now?
My resilience. Like, you say no, and I would just figure out a way if it was something that was really important to me to make it happen. My first nursing jobs, I was rejected
Mhm.
so many times. I did nursing school in Indiana. I came back to California, and we were just inundated with new nurses, and our new grad programs only had slots for 1 to 5 people
Mhm.
and thousands of people applying to each job. And the rejection hurt every time. And then you get rejected over 100 times and it's painful. And then you get rejected over 200 times and you think it should break your spirit,
Mhm.
but just continuing to figure out what I wanted. I mean, I was at like a luncheon with my parents' friends, and one of them said, "Well, if you wanted a nursing job, you'd have one, but you're like living with your parents." And I remember just thinking, "You don't know me at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have worked so hard bringing lunches to nurse managers, showing up every day,
Yeah.
trying to get this job, like having every certification I possibly can to try to put myself at the top of the pile."
Mhm.
Yeah, people don't know where you're coming
Mhm.
from and don't listen to them. If you feel confident in that you've tried at the end of the day, you should be able to sleep well
Yeah.
and you should wake up and continue reaching your goals.
Yep. Yep. So well said. So well said. And honestly, you are proof of that. It's just incredible. I can't wait to share this with our audience. It's so symbolic of what we teach at Meet Bridget, just the resilience, the self-trust by creating promises and remaining accountable to yourself and continuing to deliver for yourself. I love your story so much and I think you are just incredible and I am so excited to share your scrubs with all of my healthcare friends. Just thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us this evening and share your story.
This is so inspiring that you guys put this podcast together.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for doing this and all the people who listen to it and get to learn from you guys. That's just amazing.
Thank you so much.
I am happy to provide like my social media handles. And if anyone messages, I'm the one who reads all the messages. If there's something out there that someone's trying to start something and just wants to brainstorm, I would be happy to help in any way I can for
I
nothing.
love that. Please do. Where can our listeners find you?
I'm on Instagram and TikTok. Not really good with the social media, so I see the
It's
messages
okay.
better definitely on the Instagram. But for all of us, FOROLIVEUS. And I'd be happy to connect with anyone who's looking to start something or kind of push you in the right direction or give you some ideas to think about. I had a lot of people who helped me move this thing forward. If I could,
Mhm.
help somebody else, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll definitely put all of your information on the show notes, and we will be tagging for all of us in all our social media posts. So thank you again, Kathryn. This was so wonderful, and we will chat soon.
That sounds great. Have a great day.